It's time to break down a 2021 rookie-only mock draft and talk about, is it Harris at 1.1, or do we contemplate one of the wide receivers? Or are the wide receivers 1.1 and 1.2? In my 17 years in this business of fantasy football advice giving, I have never, not one time, advised someone to take a wide receiver at 1.1 in a rookie-only mock draft. It's always been running back. But times are changing, and that's not to say that Harris won't be good or that the running back's dead. I've argued against that ever since people would jump in and out of these cycles of there's no running back, the running back's dead. Everything's a cycle, but these wide receivers, Jamar Chase and Devonta Smith especially, you could throw in Waddle if you want, but these two wide receivers, in my opinion, have the potential to be top 5 to 10 overall players in fantasy football for a decade to come. Give them about a year to a year and a half to get settled into the NFL environment. I'm not saying to expect Justin Jefferson type production as rookies. The wide receivers coming out of college these days are prepared. They're bigger, they're stronger, their route running is on point. These players are learning things that they weren't learning at a younger age and honing their craft differently. They're evolving. And it's not just the wide receivers, it's the quarterbacks, it's the tight ends. Honestly, the running back out of the 4 main offensive positions in fantasy football, the running back's the only position that hasn't gotten better or evolved in terms of coming out of the college football game and heading right into the NFL. Running backs have always been able to translate really quickly, oftentimes as rookies, having breakout years as rookie running backs. They sometimes hit a wall at week 10 or 11 because they're used to a short college season, but running backs have always been capable of being top 10 running backs right out of the gate as rookies, if in the right spot. Wide receivers used to always take at least 2, usually 3 years to get to elite level, elite production. Not anymore. Justin Jefferson is kind of an anomaly, although he's a harbinger of things to come for the position. And certainly I would not rule out Jamar Chase or Devonta Smith doing what Jefferson did. And quarterbacks, same thing. Look at Herbert, look at Joe Burrow. Look how quickly these quarterbacks can evolve if in the right spot. Trevor Lawrence might be as good as Herbert was in 2020 here in 2021. I firmly believe that Lawrence could be the next Peyton Manning. And he's in a pretty good spot with James Robinson at running back. Who knows who they go get and pair with Lawrence? There's talk about A-Rob maybe going back to Jacksonville. Imagine Allen Robinson catching passes from Trevor Lawrence. And don't think for a second that DJ Chark can't turn into an elite player like Diggs did once Diggs got out of Minnesota and was handed an elite quarterback. Everyone and their mother discredited Diggs. He's inconsistent. He'll never be a top 5 wide receiver. Give him Josh Allen. Welcome to the top 5, young man. I'm not saying Chark will reach the heights Diggs is reaching right now. I'm not saying Chark will ever be top 5, but Chark most certainly, if he's the number 1, if they don't bring in Allen Robinson or trade up and draft something crazy like Kyle Pitts. Can you imagine Trevor Lawrence to Kyle Pitts for a decade? If something like that happens, maybe Chark doesn't develop into a top 8 to 10 wide receiver. But if Chark is the number 1 option for Lawrence moving forward and they can develop that rapport early on, all that Chark's a top 10 wide receiver stuff is going to come true in 2021 and beyond. DJ Chark, make no mistake about it, has top 10 wide receiver potential in a Trevor Lawrence-led offense. I'm all in on DJ Chark at really, really good, what's looking like really steal type value heading into 2021 mock drafts, like wide receiver 3 territory with ease, maybe late wide receiver 3 territory. This long old intro is to try and tell you that the positions have changed. The wide receiver now can be elite from the get-go. The wide receiver can enter the NFL now and be Justin Jefferson-like, and by at least year 2, be in the top 5 of all wide receivers if that wide receiver is capable of that kind of ceiling value. Jamar Chase and Devonta Smith most certainly are capable of top 1 to 5 wide receiver value in the NFL in the right spot. Landing spot, of course, is going to dictate all this, so save your breath if you're like, well, it all depends, Smitty, on where Devonta Smith goes based on your ranking here. We know that. We know that. Take a lap if you're even thinking that right now. We don't need to hear that. We're doing this early for a reason. We're trying to do the talent-based evaluation part right here. Javonte Williams could be the number 1 overall rookie in 2021, just like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, whether you think it was a mistake or not, how he climbed from like 6 to 10 overall on most everyone's rookie rankings to the 1.1 based on landing spot. And that wasn't a mistake. If Williams falls into the best situation for the running backs, he will warrant the 1.1 overall draft selection in your rookie only drafts because Javonte is a good running back. He reminds me a lot of the value and outlook people had on Jonathan Taylor. Even if they play a little different, the point is he will climb quickly. Jonathan Taylor did, and in the right spot, people will view him very quickly as the running back 1 of this entire group over Harris if he's in the right spot. So situation will mix all of this up. Save your breath. And Kyle Pitts, everything I said about the wide receivers, you can translate right into the tight end position. It may be a little bit more behind than the wide receiver evolving, but Kyle Pitts will revolutionize how tight ends are brought up and groomed and created and crafted and molded.
Kyle Pitts is the one who knocks.
He could very well be the next George Kittle or Travis Kelce. And if you don't want to say, I know, I can see it now.
There will be no other Travis Kelce, Smitty.
Look at it however you want. He'll be the first Kyle Pitts, and then people will be like, who's the next Kyle Pitts? How's that? Kyle Pitts, in my opinion, is deserving of a top 4 to 5 overall rookie pick. And the only reason I don't draft him higher is because you certainly don't have to. Even if he lands in a great spot and the hype gets crazy big, he's still by default going to go no higher than number 4. And that's even in a league where there's some crazy infatuated Kyle Pitts fan. Then Kyle Pitts could probably go 4 or 5. He's going to be a steal, especially if you own like 2 picks. If you've got like the 1.1, the 1.4, and the 1.5, you can start licking your chops that you're going to get either 2 of the top wide receivers because people go running back heavy at 2, 3, and 4. If you go wide receiver Kyle Pitts, imagine owning Devonta Smith, Jamar Chase, and Kyle Pitts. I'm getting excited. Not to say Javonte Smith or Etienne or Harris at 1, Chase at 3. And 5, you get Kyle Pitts. I like that too. I like all these rookies in the top 5, 6, 7 overall. They all have a lot of upside. Not all of them will land. Situation will ruin some of them. Situation will help others. Some situations might be cloudy with a hint of doubt, but we're going to refuse to accept the doubt because we love the player. And around we go in the cycle of trying to beat ourselves and try and recognize our rights and wrongs, our trends, our weaknesses as fantasy football owners, because that's what we all have, right? We have weaknesses. We don't see past our own bias half the time. I'm here to help you look past that. I'm here to help you navigate and recalibrate yourself within your own thinking, within your own rankings. That's part of every video I do, is to try and give you a sense of where is my center for valuing this player, my lines in the sand, as I talk about in my other videos. Go watch the line in the sand video if you haven't already. But a guy like Kyle Pitts, you might say, hey, his ADP 6 or 7 in most rookie data and ADP rankings, but I'll take him at number 4. That might be your line in the sand. Your line in the sand being ahead of the ADP. And I'm okay with that because I think he'll earn that 4 or 5 overall rookie only ADP. And anything past 5, 6, 7 is gravy. That's like you're just taking candy from multiple babies at that point. All right, let's get into it. This intro is by far the longest intro I've ever done in the history of the Fantasy Football Show. The Fantasy Football Show begins now.
This is the Fantasy Football Show with your host, Smitty.
Top 5 running back. You're watching the Fantasy Football Show.
Smitty!
Take a lap.
Okay, so we're going to put Najee Harris number 1. As of the filming of this video, February 16th, he is the running back 1 in most everyone's eyes. And the thing about running backs is they're a hot commodity. You can trade down if you want, if you really want one of the wide receivers. This is my ranking based on kind of ADP and where you should value guys. But in saying that, if you love Devonta Smith's landing spot once the landing spots are handed out. If you love Jamar Chase's landing spot once the landing spots are handed out. Let's say Jamar Chase goes to where I predict he's going to go, to Cincy, to be paired back up with his elite quarterback Joe Burrow, so we get to see that reunited madness happen. Then Jamar Chase at 1.1 is 100% arguable. Don't listen to anybody that says that that's crazy talk and you have to take a running back. No, not if you're taking a guy that could literally be a top 2 to 3, 1 to 5 wide receiver of the future in Jamar Chase if he's in the right spot. Same thing with Devonta Smith. If he lands in Philly and gets to catch passes from Jalen Hurts, who I think will be so underrated in 2021, especially if Jalen Hurts gets handed Kyle Pitts or Devonta Smith or Jamar Chase or Waddle, Hurts will have a breakout year. And I had Matthew Berry on my show during the Super Bowl Sunday, and we talked about Hurts, and he likes Hurts as much as I do, if not even more than I do, which is crazy because I was so high on him heading into his first start in the NFL last year. And then after his second start, when he kind of flopped that week, the week before he got benched by his coach who got fired for it, everyone jumped ship. He's not good. He's garbage. When the week prior, everybody jumped on the train. I had a full train. It was packed. People were climbed up, piled on top of each other. We couldn't fit any more people on the train entering his first start, Jalen Hurts, last year. And everybody jumped off. I can't give away tickets to the hype train anymore. It's completely empty on board this train. Barry's on board. I don't know how many of you are actually on board. Comment below if you're on the Hurts train. But give him Pitts, give him Devonta Smith, give him someone like that, and watch out. Watch what happens. I can't guarantee the Eagles will make the right decisions. They tend to draft the worst players at times, and they make horrible decisions. Drafting Rager was a big mistake. I almost vomited in my mouth when they drafted Rager, and people were like, no, he is the best wide receiver. They did a great job. No, you're justifying. It was clear. The writing was on the wall. Rager was not going to be elite. Just like I told you, Ruggs would probably not be elite. And I don't think Ruggs will ever develop into an elite wide receiver. He could dance around wide receiver 2 value at times in his career, but Ruggs will not turn into a wide receiver 1. Rager, Ruggs, pretty easy to tell. So will Philly do the right thing? They did the right thing like I predicted, and they got rid of Doug Peterson, who was so closely removed from a Super Bowl, Smitty. They wouldn't dare part ways with Peterson, Smitty. I heard that over and over. Now they're going to start Wentz with a new coaching staff. I heard that over and over. Now they're looking to trade Wentz. I'm not listening to anybody. It's all noise at this point. What I know is my eyeballs told me that Jalen Hurts was on the verge of becoming a superstar, and his growth got stunted by poor coaching, getting yanked. Could coaching mess with this again? Yeah, it certainly could. That's part of the risk, and we evaluate that. We try and package in the risk of coaching and decision making and an opportunity. We got to factor it in. So it will be ever evolving, that topic on Jalen Hurts, as we head into the coming weeks and months. Know that. I might change my mind based on what I'm seeing. But Philadelphia could be this year's version of last year's Buffalo Bills. I've been saying it all offseason long. The Jets as well. I'm telling you, the Jets, I really believe, are this close to everybody being excited about them. You watch. Jaguars too. I love Lawrence. Have I told you how much I love Trevor Lawrence? Jaguars, Jets, and Eagles are turning things around fast. Miami too. Miami's got a boatload of picks. I don't like Tua. I hope they draft a quarterback like Wilson and do what the Cardinals did, which is say, hey, guess what? We don't see Rosen as the future. Even though the mistakes of the past set us up to waste a pick on Rosen, we're not going down that road just because we had one foot in the door. We're going to take Kyler. We see the future in Kyler. I really am hopeful that of all the first round picks that the Miami Dolphins have, they understand this. They accept the fact that they don't think Tua's the answer. We go get Wilson. We go draft other players. You could get Najee Harris and Wilson. You could get, if you wanted to keep Tua and pair him to Devonta Smith and reunite those bad boys, you could have Tua and Devonta Smith and Najee Harris. And I would be more happy and pleased with Tua's potential in that scenario. But Miami could turn things around quick too. Harris, for now, if you were drafting at 1.1, you'd almost want to trade down if your goal was to take one of the wide receivers or to take Etienne or whatever. But he's not cemented into my 1.1. He's there kind of by default based on trade value and everything, but I'm not sold on it. And I'm quietly excited about these wide receivers more than I am Harris. For now, I'm putting Smith at 2 and I'm putting Jamar Chase at 3, but you could swap either one depending on where they land, obviously. If they land in Philly and Cincy or Miami and Cincy, I'm gonna be excited about both of them. Whoever Burrow gets will be a potential front runner 1.1 for me. And this is where that whole, landing spot's going to determine a lot, Smitty. This is where Chase and Smith get vaulted above Harris. As soon as we have a concrete landing spot that we love for one of these guys or both of them, they almost immediately jump to the 1.1 and 1.2. And there aren't a ton of spots for running backs, so Harris has to get a combination of lucky, his team has to get lucky, or his prospective team, and he's got to fall to the right spot for that team to take him. Harris could get drafted into a semi-cloudy situation, and as I always tell people, this is not the NFL drafts of old where the running backs got taken high, therefore the draft capital was high, therefore a team was not going to draft the number 1 or number 2 or number 3 overall running back in the draft class unless they were going to need and use that running back as a full-time guy. In a world where running backs now fall into the 2nd and 3rd round, the draft capital is much lower. A team that may not necessarily need the running back as bad as other teams might take a stab and draft that running back because the capital is low, thus making for a cloudy landing spot. Thus why we see a lot of running backs these days fall into bad situations versus always falling into a situation where they need a running back, they're going to run him into the ground. The number 1, the number 2, and the number 3 running backs are going to land in good spots. Smitty, not anymore. Not anymore. So just know that I'm ready to pull the trigger on resorting these guys in like this order or in this order. I'm waiting for the landing spot. I'm really close to pulling the trigger early. If I do just a rankings video, I'm more likely to rank. In fact, I'll admit that right now. In doing just rankings, I will put Smith at 1 and Chase 2 and Harris 3 right now. But mock drafts are different, and you have to guide people based on what I think, and also a mixture of ADP. I like Justin Jefferson more than almost any analyst out there. I'd take him at 14. I'd take him at 12. Don't tell anybody. Justin Jefferson, I would take at 12. But his ADP is like 19, 20 to like 30. It's all over the map, depending on where you draft and what population you draft in. So do I go draft Justin Jefferson at 12 overall? Because I like him, even if I think I'm 90% chance going to be right, do I go take him at 12, 11, 8 overall? No. You maximize value. You take him at a very reasonable range, even if you reach a little bit, in as many leagues as you can, and you play smart with it, and you draft other players at 9, 10, 11, and you play the odds game that he falls to you in the right spots in the right leagues, and you diversify by not taking him in every draft. Same concept here. Even if I rank Smith and I rank Chase ahead of Harris, I'm not going to necessarily draft him there. And it doesn't mean I'm not putting my money where my mouth is. It means I'm telling you, hey, trade down. Trade down a spot. Get value somewhere else. Move your 2nd rounder up to number 6 overall because the guy at 2 and you're at 1 is jonesing for Harris and he'll give up the world. Now you could get Kyle Pitts and Devonta Smith or Kyle Pitts and Chase because you moved down 1 spot. My mock draft advice has to be different than the ranking advice, but I'm clearly giving you a dose of my rankings intermix so you know that I really do like Smith and Chase more than Harris right now. I'm itching for it. Etienne, Javonte Williams. Who knows which running back's going to be better? Landing spot is going to determine this one pretty quickly. Javonte Williams out of North Carolina is the perfect frame for an NFL running back. He's like 5'10", 5'11". He's like 220. He's like a Jonathan Taylor breaking tackles type of running back. Over 1,100 yards on the ground, over 20 touchdowns on the ground. He is the most prototypical rookie running back of the entire class. Etienne's more of a Swiss Army knife, a Gibson or a Camara, if you will. Najee Harris is pretty close to being considered the ultimate every down back. A lot of people love him, but Javonte Williams just checks those boxes a little bit more. So in the right spot, Williams could go from 5 to 1.1. Waddle and Pitts are very arguable at 6'7", 7'6". I personally think that Pitts is going to have this kind of value. He's going to be slotted right where kind of Etienne is at 4 or 5 in my mind, but I'm going to try to maximize the ADP and value at every turn and get him at 6 or 7. If Waddle lands in a great spot, Waddle will stay at 6. If he doesn't, I'm not hesitating in drafting Waddle because he's a better talent when he's sitting in a garbage situation. We don't know where Waddle will be. Let's say New England takes him and doesn't do anything at quarterback. We saw what happened to N'Keal Harry. N'Keal Harry wasting away. Something like that could ruin the value of Pitts or Waddle. So I'm okay with just doing this right now or saying, hey, this is like the sleeper of the draft, but we don't have to take him high. Let's put him right here. But we know he's got this kind of value. Just like Williams, we know he's got this kind of value. But right now, we have to be smart. We have to slot these guys in the right place. Rondale Moore out of Purdue is a guy that you could rank right around here. Also, you could also put Bateman in here. I think depending on your league, I haven't mentioned him yet in these rankings. I've talked a lot about him. Where do we put Lawrence? If you're in a league where you've got a quarterback, you don't really need another quarterback, or quarterbacks are very plentiful. They're like toilet paper in a pre-COVID environment. You don't know what you're doing at quarterback. It's not a big deal to draft one. You got A-Rod on your bench and Herbert in your lineup, or vice versa. This is why I haven't put him anywhere yet. If you're in a 2 QB league, you're talking about 1.1, or at least 1.2. But you're talking about a league where quarterbacks are scarce or you need a quarterback, I'm not opposed to putting him anywhere between 4 and 7. I really love Lawrence that much. I think Lawrence is going to be the next Peyton Manning. But you have to think about your league, and where does a Peyton Manning equivalent quarterback get taken? Where does Mahomes and Josh Allen get taken? In the 3rd round, 4th round. And people still laugh at you taking Mahomes or Josh Allen in the 3rd round today, in today's 1 QB world. If you're in a 1 QB environment fantasy league, you're laughed at if you take either Allen or Mahomes or Lamar or any of those quarterbacks in the top 24 overall. You're laughed at. Right or wrong. So my point is, Lawrence doesn't have an ADP in the top 5 or 6. He just doesn't. Doesn't mean he's not a steal. Doesn't mean that if you at 7 and 8 take Pitts and Lawrence, you aren't going to dominate. You will. You will have 2 players to build around for the future that are going to be electric elite players. But there's value in Lawrence because by default, if it's a 1 QB environment, you're not going to really want to rank them higher, because these guys would, in a 2022 world, get drafted ahead of Lawrence, even if Lawrence is evolving and turning into a top 5 fantasy quarterback. But I just want you to know, this is where he should be valued. He's not, but he should be. I love Lawrence. He's potentially the next Peyton Manning. Wilson would be below Lawrence anyway. Lance would be below Lawrence. Mac Jones, and of course, everybody that loves Fields would argue that Fields is, right where Lawrence is. I personally am fading Fields. I think Lance will be better. I think Wilson will be better. I don't know about Mac Jones. Mac Jones would have to be in the best environment to be better, but Lawrence to me is the clear-cut one. I like Wilson enough to say he could get in the tier where Lawrence is headed. In the right spot, I think Wilson could be that good. Now, I think 2 players worthy of talking about here. Gainwell could be a really good running back in the right spot, so make sure you keep an eye on him. He could really climb into the top 5 in the right environment. I think also Hubbard. Hubbard's probably my favorite running back of all the running backs in this draft class, which is crazy to say because I haven't even ranked him, but I don't know that teams believe in him enough to put him at 6, 7, 8 in a mock draft. So in context of talking about my rankings, Hubbard ranks in at like 3, with me itching to put him at 2 or 1 based on talent, but I don't know how teams are going to view him. Is he going to get Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Is he going to be like Alvin Kamara, where he's doubted, but the team that drafts him nurtures his skill set, puts him into a position to win and score a lot of fantasy points like a Kamara? Those that doubt Clyde Edwards-Helaire has the ability to be a Alvin Kamara they either don't watch football or they're just so soured on what happened, they're kind of biased against him. If you take away, I believe it was like 4 or 5 called back touchdowns for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you take into account the missed games from the injury, he was easily in the top 8 to 10 for all running backs in 2021 if you extrapolate all of his stats out. Clyde was fine. Clyde could be utilized more and more in 2021. His ADP protects him into the 3rd or 4th round value. That's fantastic. The later you get him, the more upside and less risk he has. But Clyde needs to be used a certain way. Alvin Kamara could have just as easily gone the direction Clyde went, or people think Clyde went, if his coaching staff didn't use him right. So that's my worry for Hubbard. But if Chuba Hubbard gets into the right spot with a coach that believes he can be an every down back similar to how Alvin Kamara is an every down back. Divided workload, rushing, receiving, workhorse back to my definition. Not all you, workhorse back's Henry, not Kamara, Smitty. A workhorse back is a guy that gets starter touches sum total, bro. Take a lap, Fred2751, that's always in my comments saying, Smitty, Alvin Kamara is not a workhorse back. You need to get an education on your fantasy football terminology. No, Fred. Take a lap, Fred. This is my show. I get to define all of this how I want. Workhorse to me, Fred, is Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara is a workhorse, Fred. And Hubbard could be too. Hubbard could be the best running back on this entire board here if used properly. So let's keep an eye on his value. Let's keep an eye on where he could go, what teams are saying about him, how he does in his workouts, and react accordingly so we can scoop him up at every turn and get him at a price tag that if he fails based on usage or belief or coaching support, we don't get burned. That's my 2021 mock draft. I hope you enjoyed it. Comment below with what players you think are too high, too low. Who do you like in your top 12 overall? I know I ranked 7 and then talked about 12, but you get the point because sometimes ranking them, putting someone at 8 and 9 when there's arguments all across the board on who's 8 and who's 9 is ridiculous. I'd rather tell you how I feel. I'd rather tell you that Hubbard deserves to be 6 or 7 rather than put him at 12 and let you know we're going to wait and see on Hubbard. Get on over to Smitty1.com where you can find all of my content, everything Smitty related, all my podcast links, my sleeperu.com news site. Get your news from me. I do dynasty and redraft news attached to every news post I put out there. So if you want hardcore fantasy football news, get it from me at sleeperu.com. Get on over to Smitty1.com. Tell your friends, tell your grandma, tell everybody. I will see you next time.
This is the Fantasy Football Show with your host, Smitty.
Top 5 running back. You're watching the Fantasy Football Show. I'm Smitty.